Assalamu alaikum. Apple stock is a very popular holding amongst funds that cater to Muslim investors. In fact, it is the largest holding in a number of very prominent funds. For example, it is the largest position in Wahid's Halal ETF, representing around 19% of their total portfolio. It is the largest position in Sharia Portfolio's SPUS ETF at around 13% of their total portfolio. And it is the largest position in the Amana Trust Growth Fund, ticker symbol AMAGX, with just over 10% of their portfolio. Now, given the popularity of Apple stock in funds that cater to Muslim investors, I think it's appropriate to examine very closely the halalness of this stock, and that's exactly what I intend to do in this video. Last time I reviewed Apple stock, I gave it an 8 out of 10. This was in October of 2019. At the time, I dinged it 2 points because it issued a credit card, and this credit card is to charge borrowers interest on the amount that they borrowed. So I dinged it 2 points because of the interest that it was set to earn, which is prohibited in Islam.
The halalness rating I'm going to give for Apple is 8 out of 10. I dinged it 2 points because of its issuing of a credit card.
Since that video, I stopped using a numeric scale to judge halalness. I've transitioned to a scale that ranges from extremely uncomfortable to uncomfortable, and then questioning, then comfortable, and then finally extremely comfortable to invest in from a halalness perspective. And the reason I transitioned to this scale is because, first, I think it's more readily understood than the numeric scale. And second, I want to emphasize the point that in many public equities, it's very hard to discern whether something is halal or haram. Obviously, you have stocks like Budweiser, the manufacturer and distributor of alcohol, that can be easily classified as a haram stock to invest in. However, when you're talking about a stock like Amazon, for example, that has so many different operations, so many different businesses, it becomes a judgment call. It's less certain whether it is halal or haram to invest in. You have to make a judgment call, and really what you can say for certain is basically your level of comfort, knowing what you know, investing in that particular stock. And that's why I transitioned to this scale. So what I want to do in my videos is basically let you know what my level of comfort is investing in the different stocks that I examine from a halalness perspective. Now, as viewers of this channel know, my level of comfort investing in a particular stock from a halalness perspective does not depend solely on where the company makes its money and the company's financials. Rather, I like to look at the company's operations from an ethical perspective, how management conducts itself, and what impact the company is having on society and the environment. Now let's talk about Apple. Apple's Q3 2020 revenue by product is as follows. Around 26 billion from iPhone sales, 13 billion from services, 7 billion from Mac sales, 6.5 billion from iPad sales, and another 6.5 billion from wearables, home, and accessory items. So services represents only 22% of Apple's revenue. The rest of Apple's revenue, that is 78% of its revenue, comes from the physical products that it sells. iPhones, Macs, accessories, etc. Now here we're faced with the issue of how does Apple assemble its products, and specifically I'm talking about which Chinese suppliers does it use. Now what is the issue here? Well, the Chinese government, for those who are unfamiliar, has been trying to systematically erase the Muslim identity of its Uyghur Muslim population. China is believed to have detained between 1 and 3 million Uyghurs in internment camps in Xinjiang province, describing these camps, which reportedly include forced sterilization, as job training and education. Beyond the detention camps, there is now growing evidence that Uyghurs are being forced to work in Chinese factories. The forced labor is happening both within Xinjiang province and other parts of China, according to recent reports. A March 2020 report from the Congressional Executive Commission on China also found Uyghur forced labor taking place within internment camps. According to a report from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, at least 80,000 Uyghurs were taken from Xinjiang province and transferred to various factories around China between 2017 and 2019, though it's likely that's a lowball estimate. Some Uyghurs were taken directly from concentration camps to the factories, though the conditions mirrored those they faced in detention. According to the same study, Uyghurs were under constant surveillance, forced to undergo Mandarin language instruction and other political teachings in their free time, and most critically, they cannot leave. Now the question becomes, which Chinese factories are involved in using this forced Uyghur labor? The US Commerce Department has blacklisted 11 Chinese companies for this reason. That is, their use of forced Uyghur labor. And by the way, I think it's important here to mention that as far as I could tell from my research, the US has done more in support of Uyghur Muslims in China than any other Muslim majority country in the world. On this issue, the US should be commended for its stance in defense of Uyghur Muslims in China, and for having the courage to stand up to the powerful Chinese government, unlike the governments of Muslim majority countries that at best didn't have the courage to break their silence, and at worst actually defended the Chinese government's actions. And if you want to find out which countries I'm talking about that defended the Chinese government's actions, they're only one Google search away. And to those Muslims and Muslim countries that have turned a blind eye to government's actions because, after all, Uyghur Muslims can't help them with anything, but the Chinese government could help them in many different ways. For those Muslims and Muslim governments, I would say, remember the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him. إِنَّمَا تُنْصَرُونَ بِضُعَفَائِكُمْ. You will achieve victory based on how you treat the weakest amongst you. Something to keep in mind. Honestly, this has been one of the hardest videos to research for and prepare a script for, because with all the readings, I got familiar with the horrible things that are happening with Uyghur Muslims. And then what added frustration and anger was the position of Muslim countries and Muslim governments around the world, which is really sad to see. Anyway, back to the US Department of Commerce's list of blacklisted Chinese companies. One of the companies blacklisted for their use of Uyghur slave labor is Nanchang O-Film Tech. O-Film Tech, a supplier of Apple, has been accused by the United States Department of Commerce of violating the rights of Uyghur Muslims in China. Now, if we go to the Apple list of suppliers for 2019, 2020 suppliers haven't come out yet, we see that O-Film Tech is listed as a supplier for Apple. Now, I'm not sure whether or not Apple has cut ties with O-Film Tech or not. Initially, after the report, Apple responded saying that it had investigated claims, and they said, "We have found no evidence of any forced labor on Apple production lines, and we plan to continue monitoring." Apple said it had not found any issues despite conducting several surprise audits of its long-term supplier, O-Film. First of all, let's make one thing absolutely clear. There's no such thing as a surprise audit in communist China. Everything's under surveillance. Everyone is under surveillance. So don't try to convince me that you surprise audited anyone. Second, I am much more inclined to believe the US Department of Commerce than I am inclined to believe Apple, because the US Department of Commerce doesn't really have anything to gain from singling out a specific Chinese company for this abuse, whereas Apple, if this supplier is found guilty, would have to replace a major supplier that it relies upon. Since then, there have been some unconfirmed reports that Apple has indeed severed ties with O-Film. I hope these reports are true. However, O-Film has denied this, and Apple hasn't released any statement confirming that it has actually severed ties with O-Film. As far as I'm concerned, unless Apple comes out explicitly and it says we have severed all ties with this firm, in my mind, those ties still exist. Additionally, O-Film is not the only Chinese supplier that Apple deals with that has been found using Uyghur forced labor. A report from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute entitled Uyghurs for Sale identifies 3 other factories in Apple's supply chain. A local government document from September 2019 said that 560 Xinjiang laborers were transferred to work in factories in central Henan province, including Foxconn Technology. Foxconn, a Taiwanese company, is the biggest contract electronics manufacturer in the world, making devices for Apple, Dell, and Sony, among others. The Zhengzhou facility reportedly makes half of the world's iPhones, and is the reason why Zhengzhou City is dubbed the iPhone City. It is unclear how Uyghur workers are treated at the Zhengzhou facility. However, a September 2019 report by New York-based China Labor Watch said contract workers at Foxconn's Zhengzhou factory, which includes Uyghur workers, put in at least 100 overtime hours a month over the past decade. Foxconn has been marred by allegations of worker exploitation and even suicides, including recently at its Zhengzhou facility. The company has also actively participated in the Xinjiang Aid Scheme. Further, on the 17th of May 2018, 105 Uyghur workers were transferred from Kiria County, Xinjiang to Hubei Yihang Precision Manufacturing. Upon the workers' arrival, a senior Communist Party official visited the Hubei Yihang factory. In a speech, he put forward 3 demands: for the workers to exercise gratitude to the Communist Party, for the managers to increase surveillance and intensify patriotic education, and for the workers to quickly blend in. Now, Hubei Yihang makes backlights and battery covers. Its website claims that its end customers include Apple and Huawei. Now, while neither Hubei Yihang nor its parent company is included in Apple's supplier list, Hubei Yihang's website lists Gore-Tex, which directly supplies Apple with AirPods, as one of their customers. And in 2017, another electronics company that claims to make components for Apple's Supplier signed a contract with the Bhutan government to take in 1,000 Uyghurs each year for the next 3 years, according to the company's vice president. Later that year, more than 500 Uyghurs from rural Guma County in Hotan Prefecture were transported to Hefei in Anhui Province to begin work in Hybrod's electronics factory. In 2018, 544 Uyghurs were transferred from Guma County to the Hybrod subsidiary. According to state media, a young Uyghur woman learned to improve her Mandarin and workplace discipline and to take daily showers. Apparently, they don't know that Muslims do wudu 5 times a day. That made her long hair more flowing than ever, she is quoted as saying. Like President Xi has said, happiness is always the result of struggle, barf, barf. So based on what I mentioned in this video, I'm changing my halalness rating for Apple to extremely uncomfortable. I don't want to have anything to do with this stock unless Apple completely severs ties with all companies tied with Uyghur forced labor. And by the way, this isn't just a Muslim forced labor issue. This is a human issue. So if Apple is found to participate in any forced labor programs indirectly through its suppliers, then this is a no-go for me. Now, I understand that not every company is perfect. I understand this. But in the case of Apple, where 78% of its revenue is coming from the products that it sells And as far as I can tell, all of these products are assembled in China. And some of Apple's key suppliers are associated with this repugnant program of slave labor. In this case, I am past any point of being able to justify investing in Apple from a halalness perspective. I just can't do it. This is also obviously not a commentary on the Chinese people. I'm sure there are good Chinese and bad Chinese, just like any other people in the world. This is a commentary on the Communist Party Chinese government's treatment of its citizenry. So I would encourage the managers of funds that cater to Muslims and hold Apple stock in their portfolio to review this holding. I would encourage people who are invested in these funds to email these funds, make their voice heard so that they know that you're not comfortable with your money being invested in Apple stock. And perhaps if enough funds divest from Apple, it will hit their radar and it will be an added incentive for them to do the right thing and find different suppliers. It took me a lot of time to research this video, so if you found it thought-provoking and useful, I'd really appreciate if you left a like, subscribe for more content. If you're looking to buy stocks in the United States and you'd like to support the channel, try out M1 Finance using the link in the description. Until next time, make sure to take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.